Hello everyone. Uh, so I hope you guys have enjoyed my last video and I was actually working on something entirely different and I realized that I found something interesting. So I thought it would be great if I share it with you guys as well. So in this video, I will show you that how Microsoft is working on, converting the whole posting routine for the sales side as well as the purchase side to, or maybe in service side as well, and trying to convert the logic of invoice posting buffer, the way you populate the invoice posting buffer into an interface model. So I'll talk about that a little bit, and it's something which I stuck during my work earlier a few days back. So I thought it's worth sharing because I've done some more finding on that and read about it from Microsoft that what they think and what's their idea behind that. So after all those findings I've done on on my level, I thought it's now worth sharing it with you guys as well. And because it's just a matter of time that they might be releasing it very soon, and there could be some changes on top of that. I don't know. I have what the build that I have, so I'm sharing my finding based on that. So it's going to be a quick one, but before I proceed further, quick introduction, like I always do. My name is Rishabh Shukla, working as a managing consultant with Oli Technologies. Um, you must be aware if you are a regular viewer, then yeah, must be watching my YouTube channel as well. And yeah, that's my blog. And I'll come to the third tab of my browser later in some time. So that was it about the introduction. Now let's move to the topic very quickly because it should be a quick one. But so. Uh, if you have been working with the nav development from, I would say, 4 or 5 years, you should be in a position that you have a basic know-how that how the posting routine of the sales module or the purchase module or the general module works in nav and now in Business Central as well, right? So 80, 90 are basically coordinate for 80 specifically to post the sales routine and coordinate 90 specifically for purchase routine. And then, 12 is for journals and then 22 is for item posting, right? So those logic are still in place. Now, ideally, what we understand and based on my knowledge, what I know is that every time you post a sales order, let me take an example to make it more easier. So once you create a sales order and it has, let's say, 10 lines or 20 lines, could be same item or could be different item. But if they have a same sort of combination with respect to their product posting, business posting, VAT posting, and I think dimension is also part of it. Yeah, dimension is also part of it. So if the combination of all those 10, 20 lines is same in that sales order, so the moment you're going to post that line, it basically consolidates all those lines in the GL and creates one GL entry for the sales account, right? Uh, Not exactly similar, but somehow similar type of activity happens in the VAT as well. Again, side of VAT also brings up taxation, and then side of taxation also brings up different localization. So India is altogether different era when it comes to taxation on that side because they have GST in place and TDS and so many taxations. Okay, so let's consider sales for a minute, yeah. So there is a process, and this usually is very interesting thing that when I discuss it with some of the fellow consultants, and they basically wants to understand that how system basically consolidates or summarize all these 10, 20 entries or lines into one transaction. I mean, they understand that conceptually, but they also wanted to understand how nav is doing it. So if I take you to coordinate 80, and I'll talk about sales in this blog. So that's my coordinate 80. Every time you post a sales order, you click on the button of that sales order, it goes to coordinate 91, then coordinate 91 redirects it to coordinate 80. And based on the booleans that you have selected on your sales header, it basically decides that what has to be done, whether it has to be a shipment or an invoice. Now, if I take you to the old version of code, what it does at that time is that there is a table called Invoice Posting Buffer. It should be in place. if I'm not wrong. Mm, that's interesting. Yeah, there we go. So it's basically a temporary table in the previous version of, or I'll say till the version we have in BC. Okay. Um, Now, if we go to maybe maybe I should go to the structure of this table. That will give more better idea. Yeah. So if you go to the structure of this table, you can realize that this table is basically irrespective of any sort of transaction that you're going to post. Uh, Also, it has a structure where it is your data is captured in a group format. When I say group format, it means that if a line, like I said, based on the combination. When I say combinations, it's typically is this combination, okay, is coming with that combination in a same flow. Like if you process one sales line having all these parameters having same value, like uh, let's talk, if not GL account, let's say business posting group domestic, product posting group raw material, VAT posting group domestic, again raw material, tax area code, something something, you know, it's a long key. Okay, if it has the same combination, instead of throwing up an error, what it's going to do during the posting, that it's going to add up the amount of that sales line or that purchase line, as a matter of fact, to the invoice posting buffer. Now, if it doesn't have that combination in that variable at that point or in that record at that point, it's going to create a new record. So that's basically how it's doing it. And if I take you to that code, there is a function in coordinated T called um, I guess fill invoice posting buffer. Yeah, right. So if you go to this function, it will basically do the same thing. Prepare sales line, and if I go here, it should be in this table itself. There you go. So yeah, at some point it is going to say this value, that value, all those things. So now it's just preparing the line. That is good. And at some point it is also going to update the values. There you go. So it's going to take all these values from the posting setup, I guess. Yeah. So there you go. It says that general posting setup dot get all these values. That says prepare sales line, which is good. And then up to a point, I guess this one here. Maybe I'll take you down a bit more. That will be a better place. Yeah, update invoice posting buffer. That's one of the functions. And there you go. So in this function, it basically passed that record as a variable and for GL account type, blah, blah, blah. Our focus should be on this function, update. So if we go to here, update, and if I go to this function, it basically tries to find that record. If it basically finds that record, it's going to add up the amounts from the previous record. So the sales line one has, let's say, $1,000 or rupees with that combination. If sales line two comes up and it has $1,000 more, so now the amount of this record is going to be $2,000 because it's basically adding that up and consolidating that entry, right? Now that is one thing, and once it is done, it is going to loop through that record, I guess. So if I'm not wrong, at some point it is also going to loop through that record variable. There you go. So there's a function called in post invoice posting buffer, and it is basically going to loop through all these lines, and based on that, because now it has consolidated records, right, for your sales account and your tax accounts, right? Um, With India, there is a different combination. It uses tax engine. It doesn't basically post the tax account with the invoice posting buffer. But altogether, in general, how W1 works is that it's going to post that sales account and the tax account from this invoice posting buffer because it has now limited number of records. So let's say there are 10, 20 lines having same combination. Let's say, for example, no VAT for a minute. and it's going to create only one sales line. So this record variable is going to loop through only for one time. Now, if we change the combination on any one of the lines, it's going to loop two times because all 19 lines plus one change combination of that line. Okay, so it's going to basically post the record. You have even subscribers are around this, but now this is where the change has been introduced because till now this is what has been the legacy. It has never been changed, and I think code has been refactored to a point, but it has not changed that much to a basic understanding for our developers. And apparently it shouldn't be because first thing is that people are very used to it, and second, yeah, it's a very tight spot to do a lot of change. And given the fact they're already making, you know, evolving a lot of feature in the system, right? Now there has been some challenges here as well, and one of them was the combination. So every time when you do some sort of consolidation like this, there has been requirements where you would like to do your own grouping for those transactions. Or as a matter of fact, like let's take some other example. So every country doesn't use VAT. They might use some other taxation. So in that case, they might want to add a new field in that table. They might want to add a new combination to that table as well, right? So in cases like that, in summary, you want to change the logic of grouping in the invoice posting buffer because everything works fine as long as this table has that number of record. But if the moment you change a combination, and if that combination is not considered in this standard scenario, that is where the problem comes up. So to handle that, and I will now come to this part of my blog where I'm going to introduce this section of from Microsoft. And this is where I noticed one thing that if I go back to that function, I have realized that now it says sales invoice posting implementation. They are basically, going to deprecate this function in 19.0. Well, that basically opened my eyes for with a surprise. So that's where I realized that I should go and read their documentation. And during this, I have noticed that they have introduced an interface. I'll introduce and I will tell you about that. But my major concern was what's the need for doing that, right? And this is where this whole thing makes more and more sense, right? It says the refactoring makes the process for sales, purchase, and service transaction extensible, right? And enables partners to change the way posting algorithm aggregates GL entry. For example, by specific document lines, posting group, and tax setup required by local legislation, partners can replace customization by using interface for GL invoice posting, resolve legacy issues for the invoice post buffer table, and use their implementation for GL invoice posting. Well, that basically clears up almost everything. So logically, now let's come to the change that they have done. Okay, so what they have done here is that they have created an interface variable. Okay, I take you to that variable. So there is a variable called invoice posting interface. If I go to that variable, this, you know what, before that, I would like to show you something. Sorry, my bad. So on the sales and receivable setup, this field is not visible on the UI, but if I scroll down a bit and go to inspect data, there you go. So there's a field called invoice posting setup in the sales and receivable setup. Similar kind of field is also available on purchase and receivable setup. Okay. Now this field is basically an enum. So if that's my sales and receivable setup, and that is my sales invoice posting enum, right? Now if I go to that enum, there you go. So this enum is implementing an interface, which is invoice posting, and it has two options for now. One of them is invoice posting default, which is implementing an undefined posting invoice. And there is another invoice option, which is basically implementing the sales post invoice code unit. Okay. Now, if you're aware of the concept of interfaces, you know, an interface is basically our own word in the programming term. It's more of a way where you can, you know, uh, you can define your function definitions in a polymorphic way where the implementation of the function can be written into specific code units. So if I talk about this one, so there is an enum which is implementing this interface. Okay. Now if I come here and if I say that's the function, now some of the code units is going to implement this interface. And if I take this example for an instance, so if I go to sales invoice post code unit, so it says if this value of the option is invoice post version 19, then it should be implementing this version. So if I go to this version of code unit, so this code unit is also implementing this invoice posting interface, right? And if we try to connect the dots, you can see it has almost every function, not almost, at least the global procedures of this code unit is basically aligned with with the procedures mentioned in the interface variables. So if I go back here and if I do this, there you go. So check, and that's your function check, right? And you can notice they have the same definition because that it should be. Now the thing is that it's an interface, and whenever this interface function is going to be called based on the value of enum, it's going to implement the code unit. Now this code unit is basically pointing it to sales post invoice, which is basically executing all these functions, right? So let me walk you through the code of code unit 80 now. So in code unit 80, there is a there's a function called use legacy. It's so wherever the code of invoice posting buffer is written, they have introduced a function there which says if use legacy invoice posting. Let's go to the definition of this function. So first things first, and that is very important, that whatever we are saying here and we are discussing, it may or may not change in future because Microsoft has not allowed it for production users for now. Okay. So that's one and very important thing. So for now, if it's a production database, then they are not going to allow it. It's basically they are going to exit true, which means that you're going to use the existing posting routine module. If not, then you are going to use the you know GL setup, going to get this GL setup, and then it's going to return the invoice posting as default. Now, why the code is written this way is it is only so that partners should not be able to use this functionality as of now because it's going to screw up their data big time if it is not stable. And there must be a reason. If there is any bug in the system because of this, it's going to make massive impact in the system. Okay, so it says. Uh, Use legacy is going to return a boolean only if the value of this is default. Okay, that is one thing. Now if it is not written that way, then what it's going to do now is that so let's come back to that function again. Use legacy. Oops. All right, so that's one of the function, use legacy, and you can say see there is a preprocessor written here which says clean 19, and if it's not the case, in the else module it says clear buffers, right? So earlier what we used to do is that we standard used to write all this code, temp buffer header delete all, deferral line delete all, invoice posting buffer delete all. Now they are saying it's going to call this function of this interface. If I walk you through this function, clear buffers, and it's going to be implemented in sales invoice posting code unit. So keep in mind, every time if you want to use this module, the value on the sales and receivable setup for the invoice posting field has to be invoice posting V19. Else, if you are going to forcefully use it, if it's production, it's anyways not allowed. If it is not production, and if it is not, if it is default, then also it's not going to work. Okay. So that is one thing. Now, based on this property, this value, it's going to implement this code unit. And if I come to this code unit, so nothing major has been changed till now, at least I can say. So the function, definition of this function is moved here. Okay. Now in a similar way, you can see down here it also has a prepare line function, which means the prepare line function of code unit 80 legacy posting routine is also moved somewhere. So you can see here it says fill invoice posting buffer. Now it says invoice posting interface dot prepare line, right? So now let's go to the definition of this function. And so if I go to the legacy code of fill invoice posting buffer line, it is also marked as obsolete. Okay. So yeah, whosoever is basically subscribing any function from here, so they should be start working on this side as well, so that they can implement their subscriber with the different code unit. Now, there is nothing too much to worry about, to be honest. I've seen a similar issue when I implemented this functionality and on the sandboxes and forcefully, but so I realized that there is not too much change. Why I'm saying this is because if I see this line here, um, come on, okay, it says prepare line in the invoice posting interface. If I go to invoice posting interface, prepare line here, it takes variant of, document header line, ACY. And if I go to sales post invoice, it has a function prepare line here. And I can see it typically has a similar code that what you have in the fill invoice posting buffer function. Actually, more than that, to be honest, right? So subscribers are not going to be too much screwed with your system, to be honest. If you just look through the code, they have similar sort of subscriber. In some of them, I have seen the name might have been changed, but in most of them, they are not. Okay, and even if they are changed, it's not going to break your functionality, to be honest. I have tried to change the reroute my functions in my one of my customization, and it didn't took me more than 10-15 minutes to compile the whole thing again. Okay, so that's not going to be a challenge, to be honest. Now you can understand what I'm trying to explain here, to be honest. So everything that has been posted using the invoice posting buffer, it's basically implemented using an interface now, and the logic is written in the sales invoice posting routine, uh, sales invoice posting code unit. Okay. Now similarly, same kind of activity is also done with the purchase module. Okay. Uh, now let's understand what is the reason for going beyond behind all these trouble with from Microsoft. The code was running fine. We have all the publishers and subscribers, to be honest, honestly needed. So why do we need this kind of implementation? And the only one best and good example I can take is that we have seen several times that based on the localization or based on the need of the customization or the functionality, we definitely need these functions to be in our control. Now, what does this means is that if one day I realize that I want to, completely bypass the way how invoice posting buffer is working in this module, or maybe I want to use my table instead of invoice posting buffer, what can I do here? I could have created my own. I could have extended this enum because it's extensible. And in that, I would have implemented a different code unit. Okay. And yeah, obviously that code unit is going to be pointing all these functions like the way it is. And I can write the logic based on my need, right? So that's one of the best way of best and elegant way of for doing your customizations. So probably you can take some functions from here and create your own coordinate, or maybe there I've seen cases there as well where the logic is completely rewritten, especially in cases of accruals and all. When that accruals are going to be posted in actuals, we have seen a lot of changes in around this module. So yeah, that is the reason why you can use this code unit, or sorry, use this interface module. So in case you wanted to customize it the way you wanted to, the right way should be that you extend the enum with a different value, write your own implementation code unit, and create all these functions and write the logic specifically to these functions. Okay, now that will make more and more sense when it comes to document posting, right? So what it means that the module of summarizing the invoice posting buffer is also going to be in your complete control, where if in future standard changes something from Microsoft, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, on the other hand, if they change something, you would not be updated with that thing as well. Okay, so yeah, go both ways. Um, there is one last thing that I would like to update you that at some point it is assigning the value of that enum. Okay. So once all this is done, there was a code in legacy system which basically posts the buffer table, right? There you go. So like I was saying, there's a function called in post invoice posting buffer in the legacy module, right? Instead of that, what it does now is that it gets the invoice posting parameters. So that's a global variable. And in this case, it basically updates the value for general document type and general document 9 number and general document external document number. Okay, so that's another table which has been introduced called invoice posting parameters, right? So based on these values, I'll take you back to that function. It goes to this function here called set parameters of interface. It basically taking that record variable as a parameter. And if I go to this function, it now says this, right? So simple assignment of that variable, right? Now, if I see the usage of this variable, um, yeah, it's not that much to be honest. So if I come back to the legacy code unit, it says set parameters, and in a similar way, when everything is done, it's also going to say post lines. Okay, so it says set total lines, and then it says post line. I'll let you go through the details of each and every function because I'm using the module that I need to use. So I haven't seen the complete code all the way around. So instead of you know calling the post sales invoice buffer table, it's basically putting all those that code in this code unit or this function, and it's basically looping them here. So typically code is pretty much same. Now, if in case you're using your own buffer table, you can loop your buffer table here, or you write your own in your own implementation code unit. Okay. So in summary, moving forward, though the system might work in future because that is still not implemented with the production databases of customer. Uh, so the invoice posting buffer module is going to work based on the type that you have selected on the sales and receivable setup, and the implementation or the logic behind that posting buffer, at least for now, is basically implemented in those code unit. If you want to, if your requirement suffices with the subscriber or publisher of this code unit, well, yeah, happy days, you're good to go. If not, you see there is a major customization done on that side. Better way, you create your own, you extend this enum, create a new option, and based on that option, you also create a new implementation code unit, right? And you basically then need to, you know, implement all these functions in that code unit, right? So once you implement all these functions in your code unit, it's going to work the way you want it to. Instead of running the W1 code unit of sales post invoice, it's going to run your custom code unit. And similar side of implementation is also done on the purchase and the service module as well. Okay. So yeah, guys, again, it's not ready to go for production functionality. It's in BC19. If you download symbols, you will get the idea. That's how I basically got interacted to it. And when I look at the blogs, became really excited to use this, right? Because there are a ton of customization that we need to move in that sort of area, and it's in some case it becomes a sort of difficult to to deal with the way how standard works and how we want to customize it. So yeah, that is pretty much it, guys, and I hope you understand it. Feel free to drop off any questions if you want to, and you have anything around this site. Be happy to answer it. Functionality is still not completely implemented by Microsoft, but seems really exciting. So when they're going to introduce it, it should work like vanilla. Um, what else? There was one last major change which has been done with the table of invoice posting buffer. You no longer would be able to use this table because the type of the table has been changed to temporary. So yeah, if you guys are using this table with any of your customization or anywhere somewhere in the as a variable, I don't think you should be able to use it. Yeah, that's how the story goes. It says, please ensure that you don't store any data in this table. It looks dubious, but I have seen in some of the customers where don't know who, but this table has data in it. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying the development was wrong, but there must be a reason behind people have done that. But yeah, I think the days are gone. If they are you doing it, then they probably have to use a different table and write their own implementation code unit, right? All right, guys, that is pretty much it. Do feel free to drop off your questions if you have any. And thank you for watching the video. Have a good day. Bye.